Well, we got the colors flying in the back there, heading down by O'Kellen National Forest and Tavares for the Jackson Lee Ball, I guess it is. Dressed like a Confederate, see that? Got my hat there. So, and we'll play the song. How's that? Good to go, huh?
Left and right, through, forward, march.
The book has history, economics, transportation, the Constitution, and a lot about what the country was intended to be, like a Jeffersonian versus Hamiltonian view and that type of thing. Of course, anyone who respects their ancestors and really understands the quest for self-government would have to be appalled at what's gone on the last few years. Unfortunately, a lot of Southerners have been so conditioned to think their ancestors did something wrong, it's hard for them to even look at it, even listen to you. And I know a lot of this has been indoctrinated through the school systems, the media. You know, it's like when Trump was elected, you know, the students had to have safe spaces and, you know, teddy bears and all that crazy stuff. And Jordan Peterson, are any of y'all familiar with Jordan Peterson? Teaches at the University of Toronto in Canada. Brilliant guy, clinical psychologist. The Canadian government was trying to mandate that he use certain language, and he said, no, you can't do that. And that's Orwellian for sure. But anyway, like his 12 rules for life is basically common sense, and it's just extremely popular. But you know, a lot of common sense is just flown out the window. It's like, who would think common horse sense is a revolutionary concept? You know, Orwell talked about telling the dangers of telling the truth in authoritarian times, which is kind of what we're in. Now, you know, the Southern folks that refuse to look at it, I mean, it may be ignorance, media propaganda, apathy, whatever, I don't know. And when it just drives me up a wall, people say, it's best that the South lost the war. And that's such an ignorant statement. I can't believe anybody was walking around and should make a statement like that, personally. But anyway, but trying to fight this misinformation, it's hard for the SCV, UDC, groups like us, you know, because we're not politically correct. I think we're factually correct. And y'all familiar with Tom DiLorenzo, right? The libertarian writer. He uses this term court historians. And a court historian is basically somebody that just kind of guards the propaganda that the government wants people to know, you know, the half-truths and whatever. Ken Burns, Harold Hoser, Wells-O, a lot of them are just Lincoln apologists. Kind of like the Ministry of Truth that Orwell talked about as well. I had kind of a run-in with one of these guys, this Alan Wells-O character. October 29 of 2017, I was watching C-SPAN, which I'm a C-SPAN junkie, as my wife will tell you. But they were talking to this guy, this Alan Wells-O, who teaches at Gettysburg College. He was talking about how he was so baffled when the South seceded, and then he made this allegation about Lee committing treason. But of course, that's a falsehood. Lee, you invading a state, it was committing treason, you know. But anyway, after the show, I tracked down this guy's email, and we went back and forth for a lot of stuff, and it got a little bit testy. He got into the name calling mode and all like that. But I asked him about Burt Davis quote, where he quotes Salmon Chase, you know, talking about secession and not rebellion and all that. In the John Baldwin testimony, where he went and talked face to face with Lincoln. And he emailed me and said I was using the wrong sources. I mean, this guy's a historian, he's telling me I'm using the wrong sources. Baldwin was the primary source, a face-to-face interview. Anyway, but to me that's arrogance and it's propaganda. I just, as you can probably tell, I'm not politically correct at all. But I asked him how quoting an individual who spoke directly to Lincoln could be a wrong source. And that's when he started name calling. You know, Robert E. Lee and Lord Acton were big buddies. They talked about what was going to happen, you know, after the war was over. He said, oh, Lord Acton was an elitist. Joe Sobrand, who was a pretty devout Catholic, he died years ago, but he was a very, very good writer. Anyway, he says Sobrand was anti-Semitic. Now, I mean, I don't know where he comes up with this stuff. There's another guy named Gary Gallagher. He actually wrote the foreword of the book about Porter Alexander, who the town I'm from is named after E.P. Alexander. And I was told Gallagher knows the truth, but he won't tell it because it helped him get a job at the University of Virginia. You know. Anyway, but what I've attempted to do with this book is trace these various schisms between the North and the South, going back to the founding and actually back to Great Britain and parts of Europe. There was some overlap in the folks that settled both regions, you might say. South, they talk about diversity. You know, that's actually out of the old Frankfurt school, but I'm not going into all that. But you know, the South, the early South was a mixture of English Cavaliers, Scots-Irish, Highland Scots, Germans, French Huguenots, Cajuns, Creoles, Spanish, Black, Indian, you name it. It was a very diverse part of the country. Of course, early on, the North had Germans and some Scots-Irish. They had a dominant bunch called the English Puritans, who had basically been run out of England and Holland, both. And a lot of them became Unitarians and humanists and all like that, which made it even worse. I don't know if any of you are familiar with David Hackett Fisher. He's got a book called Albion Seed. He traces those 4 major migrations from Britain over here. It's very eye-opening. But aside from culture, of course, you had an agrarian society in the South. I mean, it wouldn't matter if it had never been a slave brought here. It was going to be agrarian. Just common sense tells you that. And the North had some agriculture, but they were limited. So they kind of developed corporate, banking, and transportation interests. And those interests have a lot of power. You know, I've had people say, what are your qualifications for writing a book? Well, I mean, I've read 70 plus books on the pre-war, war, post-war, all that stuff. You know, I don't know if the right word is pedantic, but nitpicky, whatever. I'm pretty much that way. I want to make sure I'm precise. But anyway, a guy named John Sophocles, who teaches economics at Auburn University, he wrote my foreword, and he and I have been friends for quite a while. Very, very intelligent man. There's a few things we talked about in the book, little known facts. At least on an informal basis, the Vatican recognized Confederate states. According to some sources, Pope Pius IX made a crown of thorns with his own hand and sent it to Jefferson Davis. And some argue Verena Howell Davis made those thorns. I don't know. But the Pope did address Davis as President Davis. Okay? The 5 civilized Indian tribes were official allies of the Confederacy. Y'all probably knew that. I'm thinking Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, Seminole. First Jewish man to hold the government cabinet office, Judah Benjamin. Jefferson Davis was right-hand man. A lot of people claim the last Confederate general to surrender, Stan Whitey, was Cherokee Indian. And the Choctaw tribe, I think, actually surrendered after he did. Which, that's another thing, the South underutilized their Indian allies, because the way they fought was really unpopular amongst Northerners of the Yankees. They don't like it. Lysander Spooner. Anybody heard of Lysander Spooner? fanatical abolitionist from Athol, Massachusetts. Who did support the war? The South. He said, this has nothing to do with slavery. This is all about the Republicans trying to turn the country over to the corporations and the banks and all the big wheels. He was pretty spot on with that one, wasn't he? All right. Abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison and Confederate Vice President Alexander Stephens said the best way to protect slavery for the South is just stay in the Union. Which common sense tells you that. It was protected, it never been as protected in history. The Emancipation Proclamation. That's in here too. This is something John Sophocles gave me about the brilliance of Lincoln as a politician. He was as slick as anybody's ever been in this country. About how he timed it and everything. But, like John and I talk, the establishment historians a lot of times they'll scoff at the industrial versus agrarian argument. But, it's like I told somebody, I know Trump is trying to, I think he's trying to get people to the negotiating table, but tariffs are just a tax. And who pays taxes? We do, If you get them to the negotiating table and you make it fair on both sides, that's great. Otherwise, it's not so great. But agrarian societies need free trade. You need as low a duties as possible so you can move as many goods back and forth. Now, John Calhoun, who John Sophocles says was an absolute brilliant economist, he set the benchmark import duty around 20%. And John said, that's still pretty much on it. Chapter 13, which I think Mr. Beasley, that's the one that was in the Abbeville on the blog. This whole chapter talks about Southern representatives trying to talk Lincoln out of the war. And Virginia was still in the Union. So they sent this guy, John Baldwin, to talk to him. And, I'll start first of all, his first inaugural address. He told the world the reason the war would be fought, to collect duties and imposts. It was a threat of invasion. In April 1861, the 3 separate interviews. First one, John Baldwin, April 4. Second one, H. Stewart, William Preston, and George Randolph, April 12th. Third one, Reverend Richard Fuller, members of the Young Men's Christian Association of Baltimore, Maryland, on April 22nd. What did he tell all of them? He said, I can't let the South go with a 10% average duty. They'll put me out of business. April 19, 1861, the Blockade Proclamation, first paragraph, talks about collecting revenue. All right, Lyon Tyler, who was President Tyler's son, in the Gray Book. Are y'all familiar with Lyon Gardner Tyler? He was gung-ho. He wrote some good stuff. But anyway, he talked about the 3 meetings. He said, that's what Lincoln cited as the reason for the war. He wasn't going to compromise on it. He was just so afraid, He wouldn't. Baldwin tried to talk him into just calling a convention or a truce or something and hammering it out. Okay. Charles Dickens, great English writer, and John Stuart Mill, an English so-called economist. Well, Dickens went back and forth with Mill about the conflict being a tariff war. Karl Marx, who was a big supporter of Lincoln and the Republicans, wrote in Greeley's paper. He was known to say it was a tariff war. Some critical areas, the invasion of Maryland. I used to get on these sites, where you go back and forth with folks and make comments and all that. And I realized pretty quickly that facts don't matter to people like this. But the invasion of Maryland, that's the exact definition of truth. Nobody told him to send Union troops into Maryland. They said, keep them out. Well, they go in there and they arrest almost 100 people who were magazine editors and elected politicians and whatever. They arrested him and didn't even charge him. No habeas corpus, which of course goes back to, 1215, writ of habeas corpus and English common law and all that stuff. All right, another area. Lincoln was characterized as Christian or Christian-like. That's a joke. I got a whole chapter about how idiotic that was. All right. Another critical area, the Kenner mission. Anybody ever heard of the Kenner mission? I got this a lot of this from McClanahan, actually. Late in the war, Duncan Kenner was one of the big slave owners in Louisiana. He and Jefferson Davis got together and said, look, this thing's not going to work unless we dump this slave institution. And anyway, so Davis kind of discreetly sent Kenner to France and England, and Britain, say, look, we'll dump it. You just help us get our independence. And the French were actually pretty responsive, and then the English him-hawed around. And by the time all that was going on, Lee had already surrendered. It took so long to get there. But anyway, like the areas of regional and philosophical differences, the Declaration of Independence was technically a secession from the British Empire by sovereign states. But Lincoln claimed it was a nation. See, he got that, I think, from some of the earlier Story and some of those earlier guys. I don't remember who all it was. States' rights. This just freaks everybody out. States' rights, like it's something just magical. Basically, it's just the states decided to give the federal government certain rights. Article 1, Section 8. Those are granted rights. Anything else are states' rights or people's rights, whatever you want to call it. And it's nothing really, everybody says, oh, it's all about slavery and all that. That's not true. Nullification is another thing that comes up. Of course, in 1832, Calhoun nullified the tariff, and Andrew Jackson he threatened to go to war with South Carolina because it's all about collecting revenue, And then finally they did, compromise on that. But also, one they'll never tell you about, 1854, Wisconsin nullified the Fugitive Slave Act. They said, we don't think that's legit. So nullification is not, it's just a Jeffersonian concept. It's not just, and it was north, south, and whatever. If the state thought the law was not valid, then they nullified it. Secession was also considered the last resort. And it was taught at West Point using the William Rawls book. Have y'all ever read the Rawls book, Review of the Constitution? Did Lee and Jackson and really, I guess all of them during that era were taught with that book. And Rawls said, if a state wants to live in the Union, that's up to the people in that state. This is not a forced Soviet style. Of course, he didn't use that term, but it wasn't a Soviet style union. It wasn't designed to be. It's voluntary Confederation states. Lincoln. One thing about Lincoln, which I hit him pretty hard in here. I probably should have hit him harder than I did, but I got him good. But anyway, this is from 1832. He says, I presume you all know who I am. I am humble Abraham Lincoln. I've been solicited by many friends to become a candidate for the legislature. My politics are short and sweet, like the old woman's dance. I'm in favor of a national bank. I'm in favor of the internal improvement system and a high protective tariff. Well, the internal improvement system is basically corporate welfare. I mean, he was helping the Illinois Central and railroads, and I have an entire chapter talking about a lot of the railroad cases where he really helped the railroad industry. And I'm not saying the railroad industry was bad per se, but if y'all ever seen the show Hell on Wheels?
Yes.
You see where Durant draws on this board, he draws this circuitous route. Well, that was because they got corporate welfare, they got paid, they got subsidized all those miles. And that's kind of what, Lincoln was helping these guys. Another thing, the Union Pacific started on property that Lincoln owned in Council Bluffs, Iowa. So anyway, that's in there too. But anyway, summary of the issues covered in the book. Fort Sumter was orchestrated. There was an attorney from Montgomery, John, what was his name? Anyway, John Tilley. Lincoln takes command. He goes into vivid detail how they set all that up. It was a guy named Gustavus Fox who developed the plan. I talk about coercion of the states. Is it voluntary or is it not? Here's one I got from reading Miss Rutherford. I never thought that much about it. That Mildred Rutherford blockading southern ports. Well, Lincoln said the South didn't actually leave the Union, so did the North blockade their own ports. Suspension of habeas corpus. They're getting back to the old common law. Suppression of press and speech in the North. He was brutal on the North. I got a whole chapter, like 2 chapters. I got one just on Vallandigham, who was arrested in the middle of the night. He was an Ohio congressman. He was arrested for voicing his First Amendment rights for free speech because he was against the war and everything. They shut down newspapers and arrested people. And anyway, I go into a fair amount of detail on that. As I talk about, well, yeah, the invasion of Maryland, the governor told him to stay out. One of the counts of the Maryland thing was written by Francis Key Howard, who was Francis Scott Key's grandson, who was arrested because he was anti-war. He wrote from something, I think it was the Baltimore Exchange. Anyway, he referenced it in something called 14 Months in American Bastille. Violation of the Fugitive Slave Law. Of course, the Union was pretty clever. They started calling blacks contrabands, and they had all kind of free labor. But anyway, the creation of West Virginia, contravention of Article 4, Section 3, Clause 1 of the Constitution. You can't make a state out of a state without everybody having input into it. Violation of international law through the Trent Affair. Mason and Slidell were illegally arrested on a British mail ship sailing to Britain. The English came very close to go into war with the North. And another thing, the Russians actually were I think they were outside of San Francisco. They said if Britain and France join with the South, they're going to join with the North. That's pretty interesting. I'm sure that's never taught. But Farragut, I quoted Farragut and some other people, pretty good sources. Emancipation Proclamation, totally a ruse. I mean, it was designed to keep Britain and France from supporting the South. In other words, in September of '62, he says, you got 100 days to come back in and business as usual. If you don't, on January 1 of 1863, we'll free your slaves. Which, of course, the ones they had no control over. But anyway, talk about the way to preserve the Union. Official policy of the Union, medicine was contraband. I talk about this Gardner. He was a doctor from somewhere in Illinois. He said he tried to get them to change it. They just booed and hissed, and that's a heck of a policy. And of course, we know Sherman wanted to just genocide the Indians, him and Sheridan both. Plus, Sherman in particular, he didn't like black people at all. Of course, he didn't like white secessionists, and he didn't like Indians, obviously. Jefferson Davis insisted the South had a right to govern itself. He would suffer everything again. I mean, he said we're right. It's a voluntary union. And what I was talking about earlier, the correspondence between Lee and Acton. Acton is the guy that said power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Acton was an English Catholic I can call him a libertarian, I guess, in modern lingo. But he and Lee corresponded in 1866, and they said, Lee said, what's going to happen with centralized governments is you're going to be aggressive abroad and despotic at home. There again, pretty good insight. I mean, they knew history. They studied history. I talk about the just war theory. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the just war theory at all. It goes back to St. Thomas of Hippo. It's basically, Murray Rothbard was a libertarian writer, real outspoken in a lot of ways. He always claimed the two most legitimate wars was the Revolution and the southern side of the war between the states, because they were defensive wars. You know, that's a point of argument, but that was his view. There was a lot of resistance in the North to the war. They always talk about, oh, there was so many thousand Tennesseans that fought for the North. Well, there were a lot of Northern folks that fought for the South. The Gorgas Library at the University of Alabama is named after Amelia Gale Gorgas, but her husband was Josiah Gorgas, who was Confederate Chief of Ordnance, and he was from Running Pumps, Pennsylvania. So, I mean, there's a lot of them. Cooper, of course, we know Pemberton, but there's lots of Northern, and there's a lot of guys from southern Indiana, southern Illinois, southern Ohio that fought for the South. And years ago, I met this guy. He was actually, y'all ever heard of Stephen Kaufman? He was a world-class power lifter, Jewish fellow from New York City. And he had a little card that said, Dixie Forever. He said, yeah, my Polish ancestors, whose last name was Blitzer, they migrated over here and they came south and fought for the South. So that's why I say, you know, you can't broad brush history, you have to dig into it. But the last few chapters, I'm kind of roasting Lincoln a little bit more. I don't know if y'all knew in the 1930s, they had Lincoln and Lenin parades. You know who Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, the communist? You know, they were considered very similar. But you can Google search that, and it's out there. But anyway, like I said, the book's got a lot of stuff in it. It's I've got to know a guy in Opelika who was next state senator from Alabama. He's really kind of gung-ho into it. He says it's a unique book. It's got a lot of stuff like a soup, you know, it's just got all these different things in it. But I guarantee you, it's very, very positive toward Mr. Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and the South in general. And Raphael Sims, Sims was one of the great ones. But I think it would help people if you're trying to maybe defend on certain issues. I believe it would be a benefit to you. Of course, I'm biased since I wrote it, but it does have a lot of stuff in it, and 707 footnotes. But anyway, I know we're fighting political correctness or cultural Marxism, and it's an uphill battle and all that. And I always go back to the great Lon White in The Outlaw of Josie Wales. One of the great characters, one of the great movies of all time, in my opinion. He says, we must endeavor to persevere, and that's exactly what we've got to do. I mean, we've got to get the truth out and educate our own folks. It's just sad how ignorant a lot of Southern folks are about their own histories. But I appreciate the opportunity, and that's it. Thank you.